At 2:47 a.m. on October 20th, 2025, inside Russia's Orenburg gas complex, the night held its breath. Snow smothered the plains. Radar screens pulsed in the storm's glow. A tired operator sipped vodka tea and waved off the noise. "Just birds," he muttered. He did not know Ukrainian eyes had tracked his station for almost 2 hours. In 94 seconds, $300 million of Russia's energy empire would ignite. Not by a bomber, not by a cruise missile, by a $20,000 drone guided by winter itself. The Orenburg plant was more than steel and pipe. It was a winter artery, moving 500 million cubic feet of gas each day. Heat for apartments, pressure for industry, leverage for Moscow. If it failed, the southern grid would bend and crack. Moscow called it untouchable. They trusted their crown jewel, the S-400, a $500 million shield with proud radars and long spears. But that night, the weather picked a side. Snow blurred the horizon. Wind stitched white noise across every sensor. Low clouds sank like a curtain over the steppe. And beneath that curtain, a Ukrainian UJ-22 waited, engine steady, wings trimmed for the gale. In its belly rode 3 small killers, light as helmets, built for the last mile. The operator rubbed his eyes. He leaned closer to the screen. And then, everything changed. Hundreds of miles west, inside a bunker near Kharkiv, the hum of diesel generators filled the air. On a concrete floor, engineers circled a screen glowing cold blue. At its center, the UJ-22 airborne waited, its Rotax engine purring like a restrained heartbeat. The mission code name, Blizzard Phantom. The drone was not built in a lab. It was assembled by mechanics who once tuned crop dusters. A steel frame, composite wings, a payload limit of 44 pounds. Tonight, it carried 45. 3 Wild Hornet drones, 15 pounds each, packed with shaped charges of C4. Enough to melt concrete, pierce steel, and ruin Moscow's winter. At 0230, the UJ-22 lifted off the frozen runway. It climbed to 100 feet, hugging the Earth's curvature. The blizzard that punished Russia now became Ukraine's camouflage. Satellite data from American and European partners mapped the storm's heart, its crosswinds, its thermal shadows. Through that chaos, the UJ-22 slipped under every radar lobe like a whisper in static. Russia's defenses were formidable on paper. The Nebo-M radar could scan 370 miles. The S-400 could track 300 targets at once. But none of them were trained for a snowstorm that blinded infrared and scattered radio waves. Their algorithms filtered the noise. The UJ-22 became that noise. The first checkpoint lay 350 miles inside Russian airspace. No alarms, no intercepts. Moscow slept under its own arrogance. Commander Bear, in the Orenburg command post, smiled at his wall of screens. He trusted his $500 million fortress. He had no idea a $20,000 ghost was already inside his perimeter. The drone's pilot, call sign Viper, sat in Kyiv, eyes fixed on a grainy live feed. His hands rested lightly on the twin sticks. The data link, a modified 5G network, jumped frequencies 1,500 times per second. Russia's Kasuka-4 jammers screamed across the spectrum, but to the drone it was only static. Frequency hopping made the air war a dance. Viper led. Russia followed. Then, the storm shifted. Snow thickened into a wall. Wind cut across the drone's nose. Signal quality dropped. On Viper's screen, the image tore into white lines. Connection lost. For most drones, that was death. Not this one. Inside its frame, a 2024 guidance chip took command. A miniature pilot with no nerves and no fear. Solid-state gyroscopes and accelerometers tracked every movement. Without radio, it flew by math velocity, inertia, and the laws of physics. 90 seconds of silence. That's all it took. The UJ-22 cleared the jamming zone and signal returned. Viper exhaled. He was back in the fight. He glanced at the timer. 10 miles to target. He opened the payload bay. The first Wild Hornet dropped away, its motor spinning up as it climbed. It projected a phantom echo, 50 false targets fluttering like flocks of birds. Russian radars locked on, wasting cycles on ghosts. Below them, the real Hornets skimmed the snow, invisible to every scope. Ukraine's $20,000 swarm had just humiliated a $500 million defense network. The game had begun. At 10 miles out, the UJ-22 descended through the snow. Its wings trembled in crosswinds, the storm clawing at every rivet. Inside its belly, 3 lights blinked green. Viper armed the payload. He whispered, "Let's make history." First Wild Hornet peeled away, climbing to 500 feet. Its job, confusion. It broadcast false echoes, mimicking 50 metal signatures the size of jetliners. Within seconds, Russian radars screamed red. The Nebo M processed the noise, tried to sort sky from storm, but its outcomes drowned. The system was chasing birds, ghosts, and lies. On another monitor, Commander Bear frowned. Targets everywhere. He barked an order. Engage. Surface-to-air missiles erupted from their tubes, slicing through snow like arrows of light. They circled a beat that no longer existed. In a blizzard, even fire hides. The missile vanished into the storm. Miles away, useless. Bear slammed his fist on the console. How can there be 50 drones? No answer. Only static. Meanwhile, the real strike unfolded below radar altitude, 20 feet off the deck, racing at 120 miles per hour. The second and third Wild Hornets flew in tandem, gliding through valleys of snow and smoke. Each carried a 5-pound shaped charge, precision-cut copper cone, and a simple command: destroy the heart. Viper's feed flickered. He saw the silhouettes of the storage silos ahead 800 feet tall, each packed with compressed methane. He zoomed in. Thermal image faint, but steady. The targeting reticle locked. Target acquired. The Panzer S-1 batteries roared. Their 30mm cannons spat 5,000 rounds per minute. Tracers slashed through the night like ribbons of molten gold. Viper's hands tightened on the controls. He dove, rolled, and weaved through the chaos. The drone's frame shook under sonic turbulence. Every second was survival. One mistake, and it would vanish in the snow. Inside Orenburg's command post, chaos reigned. The S-400's processors overloaded. Its radar was never meant to read the ground that close. Clutter, reflection, interference, everything looked like everything. The system that could intercept an F-35 at 80 miles couldn't see a drone smaller than a seagull at 20 feet. Bear shouted, "Manual control!" Operators twisted dials, fired blind. Shells tore across the sky. No hits. The blizzard swallowed the gunfire. Viper's voice was calm. Steady. 2 seconds between bursts. Adjust pitch -1. He wasn't fighting the Russians anymore. He was fighting nature itself. The lead Hornet took a hit. Fragments shredded its tail. It spun, burning, and crashed short of the target. The second Hornet surged forward. Alone now, it became the spearhead. Viper whispered, "Fly, you beautiful bastard!" At 400 meters, the silo filled the frame an iron tower of cold gas and pride. Bear's last command echoed, "It's below radar! Impossible!" But impossible had already arrived. 10 seconds. Viper flicked the safety cover off. He armed the C4 charge. The drone leveled, engine screaming at full throttle. 8 seconds. Snow turned to vapor in its slipstream. 5 seconds. The Panzer gunners fired blindly, tracers bouncing off steel and ice. 3 seconds. Viper's breath slowed. 2 seconds. "Impact," he said. The screen went white. A second later, the blast hit. A shockwave rolled across the steppe like the hand of God. Methane ignited in a chain reaction. The first silo vanished. Then the next. 3 in a row. Flames rose 1,000 feet, bending the night into daylight. Cameras in Kazakhstan recorded the flash from 100 miles away. The physics were simple, brutal, and absolute. The shaped charge focused its copper jet at 25,000 feet per second. It sliced through 2 feet of reinforced concrete in 1/10 of a second. The fireball expanded with a pressure of 2,000 pounds per square inch. Pipelines ruptured. Storage tanks buckled. Within moments, the Orenburg plant, Russia's crown jewel of energy, was gone. Viper stared at the screen. Now, a field of fire. His headset crackled with radio static. He leaned back in his chair, heart pounding. Mission complete. In Moscow, alarms screamed across the energy grid. Power stations flickered offline. Gas flow plummeted 40% within an hour. The southern grid collapsed. Commanders shouted over each other, searching for explanations. There were none. Russia had been defeated not by an army, but by code and courage. The S-400, designed to fight stealth bombers, had been humiliated by garage technology and American-style integration satellite data, frequency-hopping comms, and doctrine born in decades of U.S. air warfare. For the analysts watching in Washington and Brussels, the message was unmistakable. This was the future of asymmetric power. Low cost, high intelligence, relentless precision. The storm cleared over Orenburg at sunrise. Smoke still rose from the ruins, drifting east toward the Urals. The ground shimmered with heat. The gas giant was silent. And above it all, a single truth echoed across the frozen plains. Brains beat Brahm. Precision beats pride. And the storm, once Russia's ally, had chosen a new master. By dawn, Orenburg was a crater of twisted metal and fire. For 3 days, the flames refused to die. What had once powered Moscow's winter now powered only silence. The smoke stretched for miles, a black scar visible from space. The cost of that night, economic, political, psychological, was beyond measure. 40% of Kazakhstan's gas flow vanished overnight. Russia's southern grid lost nearly 1/5 of its heating capacity. Factories went cold. Pipelines froze. Towns hundreds of miles away rationed heat. On social media, Muscovites posted photos of ice on their apartment walls. The Kremlin called it sabotage. The world called it precision. Ukraine had rewritten the equation of war. With a $20,000 drone, it had destroyed infrastructure worth billions. That ratio shook every general's belief in traditional defense. The lesson was brutal and simple. Speed and brains now outweighed armor and price tags. In the days that followed, protests flared in Moscow. Citizens demanded answers, and the regime had none. Russia's propaganda machine spun tales of foreign interference, but even their own soldiers whispered a different truth. They spoke of ghost drones that flew through snow like spirits of revenge. Morale collapsed along the Donbass front. Fuel convoys stalled. Artillery batteries sat idle. For the first time in months, the front lines froze not from weather, but from fear. To Western analysts, the strike revealed something larger. It wasn't just a Ukrainian success, it was a demonstration of modern doctrine. The same integration of intelligence, data, and autonomy that the U.S. Air Force has trained for decades. Real-time satellite coordination. Adaptive jamming resistance. Precision strikes from small, expendable platforms. This was American-style warfare executed with Ukrainian courage. For Moscow, it was humiliation. For Kyiv, it was vindication. And for the rest of the world, it was a warning. The age of cheap, intelligent weapons had arrived. No empire, no fortress, no trillion-dollar defense line can hide from innovation. The storm that once blinded radar now illuminated a truth that every strategist understands but few accept. Technology levels the battlefield. Courage decides who wins it. This strike wasn't just an attack, it was a statement. A declaration that precision and resolve can rewrite the balance of power. If you've watched this far, you already know what that means. Share your thoughts below. What target will Ukraine strike next? A command bunker? A bridge? Something far bigger? Tell us in the comments. And if you believe intelligence will always outrun intimidation, hit that like button, subscribe for more military analysis, and join us next time when the battlefield shifts again and the storm returns.